I mean, did someone steal the other's heart, or are we just overlooking the obvious? The laughter ignited a fire of comfort beneath the chaos, and Othello looked at Chloe, the warmth of his glance momentarily dispelling the heaviness. They can't know the truth if we don't tell it. Chloe felt a rush of breathlessness at his words and the implication that laid heavy in the air between them. What if they don't understand? She asked, her voice dipping to a hush. They will, he insisted, resolutely. If we show them what it means to love despite everything, past grievances and all. The feisty banter resumed among their friends, oblivious to the deeper confrontation unfolding just moments prior. As the laughter echoed around her, a small crack in Chloe's guard opened up, allowing a flicker of hope through. Othello caught her gaze. Theirs a shared acknowledgement of the complexities lying ahead, but a promise hung between them, a vow to face what was coming not merely as individuals, but as a united front. You know, he said, a careful tilt of humor in his tone, I'd rather get into a brawl at the town square than bare my soul in public. Chloe chuckled, the sound light yet swirling with the weight of emotion they shared. Who knows? Maybe we're both destined for the show of a lifetime. Just make sure not to miss the cue, Othello added, his voice low but filled with reckless affection. In that moment, Chloe understood. Love, raw and messy, was worth enduring the chaos. It laid pathways to redemption, allowing them both to reclaim what had been lost, fostering intimacy held steady under the weight of their past. Maybe they weren't just caught in the echoes of bygone moments. Maybe they were standing on the brink of something breathtakingly new. Scene 94, Hidden Feelings Revealed. The late afternoon sun poured through the ornate windows of the grand ballroom, casting elongated shadows on the polished wooden floor. The air was thick with tension, each silent pulse tinged with unspoken words, emotions crowded and waiting to burst forth. Othello Huxley stood near the edge of the room, his posture bold, exuding confidence, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of turmoil. He shifted his weight as he watched Chloe Carver converse animatedly with a group of mutual friends, a feigned laughter cloaking the gravity of their fractured history. Does it always feel like this? Julia, a mutual friend, leaned in close, her voice barely rising above the distant chatter. Like a storm brewing just beneath the surface? It feels more like a damn hurricane, Othello muttered, his eyes darting back to Chloe, who was adjusting the collar of her elegant dress. The rich fabric clung to her frame, accentuating her strength even in vulnerability. The slight curve of her mouth, both fierce and inviting, drew him in relentlessly. Maybe you should talk to her. The whole room can feel it, Othello. Julia nudged him. What's the worst that can happen? Meanwhile, across the room, Chloe felt a tightening knot in her stomach as she laughed with her friends, Josh and Maya. Just beyond their circle, she caught glimpses of Othello, always captivating, his mere presence igniting an unforgettable spark. She swallowed hard, recognizing the familiar mix of longing and resentment that stirred within her. Are you going to just stand there all evening? Josh quipped, elbowing her gently. I thought you were over him. I am, she fibbed, trying to ignore the telltale blush creeping up her neck. It's just complicated. Complicated, or you're just being dramatic? Maya chimed in, chuckling, although her eyes twinkled with empathy. You're not fooling anyone. You know you still have feelings for him. A sudden stillness enveloped the room, the laughter fading into an uneasy quiet as Othello strode forward. Every step he took echoed like a seismic wave, reverberating against the uncertainty filling the air. He halted, close enough now that the scent of cedar wood and musk enveloped Chloe, reminding her of times she wished to forget and yet deeply desired to revisit. Chloe, Othello began, his voice low, almost a whisper, but steady as he locked eyes with her. The surrounding laughter faded into a mere hum, barely perceptible against the gravity building between them. Don't, she warned, her tone both defiant and pleading. You don't get to walk in here and pretend everything's fine when it's not. I've never pretended with you, Othello replied, taking a tentative step closer. You know I care? Chloe interjected sharply, her gaze fierce, a fire igniting in the depths of her eyes. Do you really think that's enough? When it ruined everything for my family? The emotional weight between them was nearly palpable, a swarm of unfulfilled desires and bitter accusations threading their connection. Behind them, the chatter resumed, the onlookers entwined in a private drama that crackled with tension and curiosity. Othello took another step, bridging the invisible gap that separated them. He lowered his voice further, feeling the charged air close in around them. It was never easy for me either. You think I walk away what happened without it haunting me? She opened her mouth, ready to retort, but the spell of his gaze stopped her. A silence settled around them like thick fog, the weight of unacknowledged feelings pressing down. And yet here we are, Chloe. I can't deny this, Othello added softly, his breath mingling with hers. I've spent too long denying what we had and what we could still have. A fragile moment held their gazes captive, her heartbeat quickening in response to the electric connection building between them. An unwritten promise lingered within that space, ripe with tension and possibility. Othello reached out, brushing a stray hair from her face with his fingertips, a simple gesture that ignited something deeper. Just say the word, he murmured, as if daring her to leap into the unknown, and the world around them faded even further into the background, leaving only the two of them suspended in time. Their hearts raced as one, pulling closer until inches felt too far, breaths mingling in the tension of expectation. Moments stretched, seconds felt like hours, and as they leaned in, the vastness of their past and the uncertainty of their future entwined in a moment that would change everything. And then, with a gentle pressure, their lips met in an initial brush, a taste of what had been hidden beneath layers of regret and yearning. It was a slow revelation of the bond that had always lingered just out of reach, but felt so right now, sealed with an intensity that spoke volumes, inviting them into the possibility of tomorrow. Exhausted from years of waiting, ignorance, and misplaced blame, all of it might finally yield to something new. Did we just... Chloe whispered against his lips in disbelief, the world still swirling around them, yet in this moment it was just them, bound in uncharted territory. Scene 95, Trusting Again. The evening sun dripped warm honey over the ornate wrought iron balconies of the old townhouses, casting intricate shadows that danced across the cobblestones of the narrow street. Chloe Carver leaned against the cool stone wall of a deserted side alley, attempting to catch her breath, her fingers tightly clutching the edges of her coat. The faint hum of live jazz floated through the air, a distant comfort in the chaos that had recently enveloped her life. Amidst the tumult of resurrected feelings and shadows of past betrayals, the warmth of nostalgia battled fiercely with the chill of distrust. Othello Huxley emerged from the shadows of the alley's mouth, his presence shimmering against the backdrop of the setting sun. He paused, his striking silhouette framed by streaks of orange and red. For a moment, he simply watched her, the flicker of worry crossing his features, betraying his usual confident demeanor. "Chloe," he said, his voice steady but gentle, easily slicing through the lingering tension. Chloe turned, her heart racing as his gaze pierced through the veils she'd erected. "What do you want, Othello?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended, yet it unveiled the prickly vulnerability lurking below her bravado. "I want to talk," he replied, stepping closer, his eyes never wavering, holding her like a promise. "Talk or lecture?" She darted back, the defensive edge to her words giving way to the emotions simmering beneath the surface. "I'm trying to make amends, not to lecture." There was an undercurrent of urgency in his voice. "You're still angry. I can see it in your eyes." "Angry? You think that's all this is? You think I'm just some angry girl looking for closure?" Chloe pushed herself off the wall, the tension in her posture demanding attention. Each defining line of her form radiated strength, yet it masked the tremors of uncertainty that flickered deep within. "It's okay to be angry," Othello pressed gently, his body language mirroring openness as he moved even closer, diminishing the distance she had so carefully maintained. "It's understandable, given what happened." "Understandable? My family lost everything." "Your understanding doesn't change that," she interrupted, her voice escalating against the silk of oil lamps lining the alley. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Othello closed his eyes briefly, exhaling a soft, almost defeated breath. "It hurts to hear you say that. I regret everything." His eyes opened, blazing with sincerity. "Let me prove it to you. Just let me try." Chloe's heart wavered, caught between the memories of betrayal and the undeniable chemistry that flickered between them like the flame of their scattered surroundings. Prove it. How? You think you can magically make everything right? I can't fix the past, he said cautiously, stepping even closer, their breaths mingling in the abruptly warm space between them. But I can promise you the truth going forward. She hesitated, the clamor of her thoughts interrupted as he reached out gently, almost hesitantly, brushing her arm, an unexpected spark igniting at the point of contact. I'm still here, Chloe. I haven't backed away even when those shadows fell. You can trust me, if you want to. The world around her dimmed, every sound fading into nothingness as she met his eyes, an ocean of sincerity amidst the chaos. What if I let you in, and then you hurt me again? Her voice quaked, emotion heavy in the air. Then I deserve whatever comes next, he responded, his intensity unwavering. But I won't hurt you again. I refuse to let my past own your future. Her composure wavered as she searched his face for sincerity. The night air carried a tender breeze that toyed with the curls of her hair, framing her face beautifully. Othello stepped into the space left behind by her retreat, capturing her gaze with his own. I'm standing here, he pressed softly, open and exposed. Don't you see? I want you to see the real me. The flicker of a smile danced at the corner of her mouth, wrapping the heartbreaking weight of her doubt in the warmth of hope. And if I try to trust you, what then? Then we figure it out together, he replied, his voice low and earnest, the gravity of his words settling gently around them. Chloe hesitated, the edge of vulnerability and desire sparking between them. Together, huh? Absolutely, he said, breaking into that signature smile that softened the shadows of his past, illuminating the promise of the present. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of twilight, Chloe found herself daring to hope, a fragile but potent seed planted in the rich soil of uncertainty. Scene 96, the past revisited. The scent of aged wood enveloped Chloe Carver as she stepped into the dimly lit study, the air heavy with the weight of nostalgia. Sunlight flickered through the partially drawn curtains, casting whimsical patterns on the floorboards. The sunbeams danced around the room, illuminating dust motes like fireflies in the fading light. Chloe's heart raced as she recalled the last time she had been in this space years ago, when laughter filled the air and hopes danced on the horizon rather than shadowed her every step. Othello Huxley leaned against the grand piano, his tall frame silhouetted against the sun. He strummed the keys absent-mindedly, the notes lingering in the air light, hopeful and somehow melancholic. His fingers moved with a steady ease that belied the tension thrumming beneath his calm exterior. Without turning, he said, I thought I'd find you here. Chloe crossed her arms, feigning nonchalance. Do you ever actually look for me? Turning slowly, Othello gave her a half smile, one that held both warmth and restraint. Only when it's convenient. The subtext hung between them like a taut string, a reminder of their unspoken history. You don't get to pick and choose when to care, Othello. Her voice sharpened, echoing in the quiet of the room. The walls held echoes of their childhood, the memories tugging at her heartstrings like an unseen hand, pulling her to consider their past and the darkness that wove through it. He straightened up, eyes narrowing as he stepped toward her. And you don't get to rewrite our history. You know I was just a kid, trying to make sense of it all. Just a kid, she scoffed, bitterness bubbling to the surface. You can't play the card of youth when your choices shattered so many lives. The air crackled with unspoken words, weighing heavy like the thick clouds hovering on the horizon. Othello's voice softened. And yet, here we are, years later. We have a chance to choose again. Chloe hesitated. The vulnerability in his gaze cut through her armor, revealing the boy she once knew. For a fleeting moment, the world outside faded, and it was just them children, intertwined in their dreams, their laughter harmonizing amidst the chaos of life. But memories were a double-edged sword, and she couldn't afford to be naive. You can't expect me to trust you after everything, she murmured, a hint of sorrow creeping into her tone. Trust is earned, I know, but I'm not the only one who needs to change, Chloe. Othello stepped closer, vulnerability enveloping him, mingling with the shifting shadows. What about you? How long will you hide behind your anger? She searched his eyes, understanding interlacing with resentment. There was a stirring of something deep within, an awakening to fears long buried. "I'm not angry," Chloe insisted, though her voice wavered. "I'm resolved." His lips quirked at the corner, an inconsistency that stretched across the gulf between them. "Then prove it. What do you want from me?" Her questioning gaze latched onto him, biting back the tumult within. I want I want us to stop being ghosts of what we could have been." His voice was raw, resonating with a profound honesty. "Let's not act out this painful charade anymore." The distance narrowed as she felt the warmth radiating from him, the unguarded moments where emotions spilled over the dam they'd long since built. The weight of old feelings coiled around them, taut and electric. "Life's too short for regrets," he continued, an intensity fueling the air. "What if we weren't our past? What if we let the flames of it forge something new?" Chloe inhaled deeply, the scent of cedar and something deeper, his presence, his essence filling her senses. Here was a chance, a flicker of possibility, that maybe she could step away from the shadows. In that fragile silence, she instinctively reached out, the intimacy of the moment commanding a surrender she had long denied. Their fingers brushed, an unexpected spark igniting between them. It was the first step, the first heartbeat towards something fresh, something alive. Just as she dared to let hope intertwine with her resolve, a sudden crash outside broke the air, reverberating through the house and shattering the spell. Chloe's heart lurched. They'd evoked ghosts speaking louder than words. "Stay close," Othello ordered, urgency threading through his tone. Their eyes locked, the fleeting warmth replaced by a steely resolve. And with every hurried breath, the reality of their past pressed against them once more, like a storm gathering to claim the clarity they had just begun to find. Scene 97. An unexpected complication. The sun hung low over the sprawling ivy-covered estate, casting long shadows that danced in disarray across the cobblestone courtyard. Chloe Carver leaned against the weathered stone wall, arms crossed tightly as she surveyed the social gathering. The laughter of guests mingled with the clink of glasses, wrapped in the scent of jasmine from the nearby blooms. "Are you seriously going to talk to him again?" Kayla, Chloe's best friend, leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Kayla's expressive eyes sparkled with mischief, yet they carried a weight of concern. Chloe shrugged, the tension in her shoulders evident. "What are you implying? It's just a conversation." "You've spoken to Othello Huxley 4 times tonight. He's not just some charming stranger, Chloe." Before Chloe could respond, Othello materialized next to her, as if summoned by some invisible thread, his presence imposing yet familiar. He casually tucked his hands into his trousers, projecting an air of effortless confidence that sent electric pulses through Chloe's veins. His eyes sparkled with mischief. "Incredible party, isn't it? Seems like everyone's competing for best dressed. I'm surprised you didn't show up in a ball gown," Othello teased, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Chloe rolled her eyes, pushing away from the stone wall, her heart racing as she faced him. "That's rich coming from you, mister. I just threw this together." She gestured toward the tailored blazer that hugged his broad shoulders perfectly. A soft chuckle escaped him, filling the space between them with palpable tension. "You really think I just threw this together? This took time. You should see the effort I put into my socks." Their banter danced on the edge of flirtation, and Chloe caught herself leaning slightly closer, caught in the enchanting gravity of his charisma. But then a sharp voice sliced through the moment. "Are you two having a private chat, or can I join?" Janelle, the vibrant socialite from the finance sector, swept over, her fiery red lips forming a smirk. With a style that was at once bold and confident, she positioned herself between Chloe and Othello, her presence a wall as solid as marble. Chloe's jaw tightened as she exchanged a quick glance with Othello. His expression flickered with mild annoyance, but the corner of his mouth twitched in amusement. "We were just discussing socks," Othello said dryly, an eyebrow raised. "Interesting topic." Janelle leaned forward, arms crossed, and the challenge in her stance was unmistakable. "But surely there are more pressing matters, like the annual gala you're attending next week, Chloe." Chloe grinned, her irritation simmering under the surface. "Are you volunteering to remind me how to properly dance, Janelle?" "That might just depend on whether you successfully court Mr. Huxley here." Right, Othello? The edge of Janelle's words carried the weight of rivalry. Her smile a calculated invitation for Othello's gaze to drift away from Chloe. The men around them were oblivious to the rising tension, engaging in chatter about upcoming business ventures, but Chloe felt the room close in around her. She'd had enough. Right then, a dance-off it is, Chloe declared, stepping boldly toward the center of the courtyard, where the laughter and music heightened the atmosphere. Her heart rattled, and the thrill of spontaneity surged through her. Anyone care to join? The crowd turned, eyes glinting with intrigue as they buzzed with energy. Othello chuckled, crossing his arms in amusement. A dance-off? You really think you can outdo me? I know I can, she shot back, her voice steady despite the fluttering secrets in her heart. She turned to address Janelle. And I hope you're ready to bring your A-game, Janelle. A frenzy of excitement rippled through the crowd as they formed a circle around the three of them. Othello stepped forward, surprising everyone. But just before he could match Chloe's challenge, Janelle deftly sidestepped him with a flourish, earning giggles from the onlookers. Let's see if the rumors are true about your dancing skills, Chloe, Janelle said, an invitation laced in her tone. Chloe's heartbeat thrummed, mixed with annoyance and empowerment. She could feel the pulsing, competitive spirit of the evening wrapping around her like a cloak. As she began to sway, music igniting her every movement, she couldn't shake the intensity of Othello's gaze locked onto her, simmering deeper than the gathering applause. Careful, Janelle, he murmured, as if sharing a secret, the challenge pulsing in his voice. You might just regret this. As Chloe let the music take her, drowning in the heat of competition, she felt a surge of clarity. This was more than just a dance. It was a battle for recognition, and a fight for the heart she'd nearly forgotten to claim. The stakes were higher than they'd ever been, and with hope blossoming between them, she was determined to seize it. Scene 98. The struggle for acceptance. Inside the bustling heart of Othello Huxley's New Orleans urban oasis, sunlight filtered through the palm fronds outside, casting intricate shadows on the polished wooden floors. Chloe Carver stood at the kitchen island, carefully chopping vibrant bell peppers, the sharp scent cutting through the air. They had decided to cook together, a mundane task that hummed with tension and latent emotion. Chloe bobbed her head to the gentle jazz streaming from the vintage record player, attempting to drown out the cacophony of her thoughts. Othello leaned against the counter, casually stirring a pot of rich gumbo that simmered with spices. The heat of the moment crackled between them, both aware that they were teetering on the edge of unresolved feelings and childhood memories better left buried. Did you ever think we'd be doing this? Chloe asked, glancing sideways at him, her emerald eyes catching the sunlight. The question hung in the air with both curiosity and trepidation. Othello looked up, a bemused smile dancing on his lips. Not quite like this. I can't remember the last time I cooked with someone who didn't find me insufferable. She chuckled lightly, but the laughter felt strained, a thin veil over deeper frustration. I guess you're lucky I apparently enjoy a challenge. Or maybe I'm just lucky, he replied, his tone teasing yet layered with sincerity as he leaned forward, resting his forearms on the countertop. Chloe, your stubbornness is admirable, if a bit irritating. It reminds me of your mother. Her heart clenched involuntarily at the mention of her family. My mother, she echoed, her voice like fragile glass. She put everything into that business for us, and it fell apart because of decisions. Othello's brow furrowed for a moment. You're not that girl anymore. None of us are. We survived, right? Look at what we've built since. He gestured around, indicating the vibrant colors and life that surrounded them. Chloe's hands still, the knife resting motionless on the cutting board. But I don't just want to survive, Othello. I want to be part of a world where I can thrive. I want acceptance, not just of who I am today, but of everything that's come before. The air grew thick with unspoken realities. Chloe turned away, pulling open a drawer to distract herself, but the clattering of utensils only served to heighten the tension. Othello's gaze remained anchored on her. The intensity of his stare felt magnetic, drawing her back to him. Then let me show you, he suggested, stepping closer. The simmering pot was momentarily forgotten as they stood shoulder to shoulder. What do you mean? She asked, though she knew. Let me show you what my world can be, what it can offer. His voice was low, laced with a vulnerability she hardly recognized. Chloe dared to look up, their eyes locking. She could see a landscape of longing and the weight of expectation, all too familiar yet terrifyingly new. With a shaky breath, she stepped forward, a world within a world emerging around them. I'm afraid, she confessed, the pent-up fragments of her past spilling over. I'm afraid it'll all come crashing down again. For a brief moment, Othello reached out, brushing a stray hair behind her ear, illuminating the softness of her features, the unexplored desires laying just beneath the surface. Chloe, sometimes crashing down is where we find our strength. Sometimes it's what makes us who we are. An unexpected warmth flowed between them, as the air crackled with unspoken promises. Chloe held his gaze, feeling both fragile and fierce, a warrior standing at the threshold of vulnerability. What if I fall for you, Othello? What then? Then you'd have to catch me in return. He leaned closer, their breaths mingling, engulfed in the warmth of the spices simmering behind them. The space where they stood with the colorful vegetables and wooden utensils faded as they closed the distance. Their lips met softly, an electric spark igniting a passion neither had anticipated. It was a dance steeped in lingering memories, heavy with the taste of longing and unrequited dreams, each kiss layered with the weight of the past, yet filled with the promise of the future. As the kiss deepened, a rush of warmth engulfed them, a sanctuary where pain and longing melted away, fading into a blurred horizon of possibility. Chloe pressed closer, feeling the solid assurance of Othello's strength, her hesitations unraveling like strands of silk. The moment stretched, a pause in their chaotic realities, until the world outside returned, crickets chirped, the sizzling pot demanded attention, and the dance of acceptance began anew. Now about that gumbo, Othello whispered, breaking the sweet spell as they drew apart, laughter spilling into the space, light and flickering where shadows had once loomed. Scene 99. Moments of doubt. The rain poured relentlessly against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Wallace estate, forming rivulets that seemed to race each other, a chaotic symphony that mirrored the turmoil within Chloe Carver's heart. The ambient light dimmed, casting elongated shadows that danced across the chicly minimalist furniture, a stage ready for a confrontation she had both dreaded and desired. She stood in the expansive living room, heart racing, soaking in the familiar scent of polished wood and lavender-infused air fresheners. Outside, thunder rumbled like distant war drums, heralding an impending storm far graver than the weather. Othello Huxley stepped into the room, soaking wet. His black shirt clung to his skin, accentuating every powerful contour of his form, yet the confidence that usually radiated from him appeared dulled by uncertainty. He ran a hand through his dripping hair, sending droplets splattering onto the immaculate tile. You want to talk about it? The husky concern in his voice brought her heart to a standstill, but she couldn't afford to lean into it. She wouldn't. About our situation or about us, Chloe replied, her voice steady, betraying none of the confusion swirling in her mind. She wrapped her arms around herself, warding off the chill of both the storm and the emotional tempest brewing inside. Both, he replied, stepping closer, creating a distance that felt impossibly intimate. The warmth from his body almost beckoned to her. We can't ignore what happened. The hostages, the confrontation, it makes everything feel different, doesn't it? She met his gaze, the shards of azure piercing through the haze of doubt. Different or more complicated? The weight of her family's financial ruin hung heavy between them, overshadowing everything. Would she ever be able to forgive him for what he unknowingly caused? Her breath caught as she recalled the beggar on the street corners, a constant reminder of the financial scar he had left on her family. Othello's brows furrowed. I can't change the past, Chloe, but I want to understand how it affects us now. Do you really think you can? Her voice trembled slightly as the thunder crashed louder, echoing her inner conflict. Do you think I can separate my feelings, whatever they are, from the betrayal? You were there at the center of the collapse. The air between them crackled as Othello took a step forward, his expression an emotional tapestry. That was 10 years ago. I've worked for everything I have since then. I'm not the same person. You don't get to define my feelings, Othello, she interjected, her frustration spilling over. You're not the only one who suffered. My family lost everything because of... The tremor in her voice caught him off guard as silence strained between them. The storm outside flared, rain pelting the windows like a chaotic applause for their escalating argument. Without thinking, Chloe approached the window, the chill of the glass contrasting sharply with the heat of the unresolved emotions swirling between them. She needed space, but each moment felt like an invitation for reconciliation she wasn't sure she was prepared to accept. You think I don't regret what happened? That I don't see what my actions caused? Othello's voice softened, a plea for clarity amidst the chaos. I've spent years trying to atone for it. This isn't about your regret, Chloe shot back, her resolve faltering. This is about who you were and who I am now. Can I separate the man standing in front of me from the one who ruined my family's future? The intensity of their eyes locking made every other sound fade. Up, a deep breath in, and it flooded back. The warmth, the laughter they once shared before all this. She realized the yearning she couldn't name was pulling her toward him. As if sensing the shift, Othello stepped closer until their foreheads almost touched, the ambient raindrops on the window suddenly falling silent against their cocoon of tension. Chloe, whatever this is, it's real, he murmured, the honesty in his voice stirring something deep within her. We're still here, despite everything we've lost. We can't give up on that. The truth of his words struck her, resonating so deeply she felt it all the way down to her core. The air between them sparkled with unspoken possibilities, a whisper of hope. Despite the heaviness weighing on her heart, a glimmer of something genuine entwined with the storm raging beyond the glass. Can we? Chloe breathed, vulnerability breaking through her walls. Can we really? And just like that, as the storm raged outside, she felt the first fragile stirrings of belief blooming beneath her doubts, igniting something that had lain dormant for far too long. Scene 100. A search for identity. Othello leaned against the sun-bleached railing of the old wooden deck, fingers tracing the roughened edges where decades of salt and storm had kissed the wood. The Mediterranean sun cast a warm hue over everything, making the air shimmer with heat. He stared out at the sea, eyes squinting against the brilliance, grappling with thoughts swirling like the gentle waves lapping at the shore. He felt a presence beside him, a shift in the air that brought an electric charge to the space. Do you ever wonder what it would be like if everything was different? Chloe frowned, her arms folded tightly over her chest as she leaned against the opposite rail. Her hair, a cascade of curls shimmering like dark silk under the sun, danced slightly in the soft breeze. There was a hint of vulnerability in her voice, a tremor that suggested she had been wrestling with more than just an idle thought. Different how? Othello turned slightly, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. He kept his gaze trained on the horizon, where the cerulean water met the ultimate void of the sky. He felt her watching him, her presence like a beam of sunlight trying to break through a cloudy day. Different as in, what if neither of us had been involved in all that? Chloe took a half step closer, her body tense as if she were preparing to dart away. Each word was deliberate, layered with history and emotion. Othello clenched his jaw, the memories of their past weighing heavily like an anchor in his chest. And what would that look like? He asked, finally allowing himself to meet her gaze. Those brown eyes held a depth he could drown in. A world where your family flourished and mine didn't have to, mask itself in shadows? Chloe's lips pursed, a battle of emotions crossing her face. Maybe a world where we could have met differently, under a different star, without all this, whatever this is. She gestured between them, the air crackling with unspoken words. He noticed the way her hands trembled in conjunction with the flickers of her gaze, the underlying fear of rejection, the misunderstanding that marred their connection like graffiti on a beautiful canvas. You think that would change anything? Othello stepped closer, his body language softening as he tried to bridge the distance their history had forged between them. Do you think we could rewrite the past with a simple if? Aren't we trying to? I mean, haven't we been figuring it out since forever? She pushed a curl behind her ear, her posture slightly relaxing, as though he had unwound some of the tightly coiled springs of doubt from her being. I just want to know who we are now. His voice dropped an octave, a quiet urgency wrapping his words. For Othello, the old merchant ship creaking under their feet seemed to mirror their own collective journey, a vessel that had weathered tumultuous storms but deserved a calm harbor. I'm Chloe, the girl who's still sifting through the ashes of what was stolen from me, she said, her tone growing more defiant, eyes sparkling with determination. But I want to be more than that, and I want to know if you can be the man I believe you can be. Her emotional engagement struck him like a jolt of electricity, intense yet invigorating. There was a gravity in her voice, pulling him toward truths neither had been willing to face. The warmth from the sun turned cool, shadows creeping in as he stepped into the uncharted territory of vulnerability. Othello Huxley, the man who is painfully aware of the ruins he's left behind. That's all I see. His fists clenched, the sound of his heart thumping louder than the surf below. Then build. Reconstruct your ruins. You can't let the past define you, Chloe replied, stepping even closer, her breath mingling with his under the fading sunlight. In that heartbeat, the distance shrank, each inhalation shared like a secret neither was yet ready to admit. Othello held her gaze a moment longer, caught in a hurricane of longing and regret. And what if building leads us to a place where everything collapses again? Then we rebuild, she whispered fiercely, together. A silence thickened in the air between them, both unsettling and exhilarating, as they stood on the precipice of their intertwined destinies. Outside their harbor of emotions, the world seemed to wait, breathless, for what lay ahead. The sunset painted the sky crimson, igniting a fire within him that spoke of hope and the possibilities they had not yet dared to imagine. Maybe we're not as broken as we think, Othello breathed, an inkling of possibility tinged with trepidation as he contemplated their futures. Chloe's lips curled, the hint of a smile dancing in her eyes as she considered the myriad paths before them, each one impossible to predict. Maybe we're just starting over. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows behind them, the weight of the moment lingering like the salt in the air. Scene 101, Navigating Turbulent Waters. The storm clouds brooded overhead, heavy and dark, their ominous swirls mirroring the tumult in Othello Huxley's chest. He stood on the deck of the small yacht, the salt-sprayed air biting against his skin as the wind howled, threatening to tear the sails apart. Raindrops began to fall, fierce and sporadic, stinging against the taut lines of his taut jaw, making the usually splendid azure waters of Lake Michigan churn like a boiling cauldron. This wasn't merely a tempest. It was a reflection of the chaos within him as he grappled with his emotions for Chloe Carver, the very woman he had hurt so deeply. Chloe was below decks, surrounded by the plush, sun-faded upholstery of the yacht's lounge, her brow furrowed in concern. The remnants of a potential evening of joy had spiraled into chaos, much like the weather. She couldn't shake the feeling that destiny was trying to force their reckoning. The storm outside mirrored her emotional state, a brewing storm of unresolved anger and simmering affection. The flickering light of a lone lamp cast soft shadows against her defined cheekbones, highlighting the fierce determination in her hazel eyes. "Are you sure this is necessary?" Othello finally called down, the frustration woven heavily into his tone as thunder rumbled in the distance. He braced himself against the rail, trying to suppress the turmoil that churned within him. 3 steps and she emerged, her hair flaring out in wild tendrils as she pushed back against the gusts that seemed determined to ruffle her resolve. "The weather doesn't dictate how I feel, Othello," she shot back, her voice half challenging, half wavering. "But it does remind me that some things can get out of control." Control. The word hung heavy between them, stirring unspoken memories of what had transpired a decade earlier. The contract signed in dread, the promises made in arrogance. It was the very thing that had infested their relationship with distrust. Othello wished they could peel back the layers of the past, but every word felt like a knife against fresh scars. Chloe closed the distance, her gaze piercing. "You don't get to tell me what I should feel when you're the one who destroyed everything I once believed in." The wind wiled up again, lashing at the yacht's sails, unable to determine if it should roar or whisper. Othello's heart galloped at her words, both a reprimand and a rebuke. The silence stretched as he struggled with the hurt pride twisting in his gut. "Maybe I deserve it," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the storm, examining her. Caught off guard, she softened for just a moment before the grit returned, reinforced by the tension weaving through the air. "Do you know what I could have become? The career I could have had you not played God with my family's future? Why do you keep invoking my past sins? I've spent every day since regretting it," he countered, emotions volleying like the waves hitting the sturdy hull beneath them. "But I'm not that man anymore, Chloe." Before she could respond, an explosive gust flung a downtrodden canvas awning across the deck. As she reached to steady herself against the rail, the yacht lurched violently, sending her tumbling toward him. In a swift motion, he reached out, his hands gripping her waist as he pulled her closer, their bodies colliding. The world around them faded, alive only with the tension thrumming between their faces, illuminated by flashes of lightning that pierced the swirling darkness. "Let go of me," Chloe said, though her voice lacked true conviction. A rush of heat surged through Othello, his breath mingling with hers, caught in an electric pulse of vulnerability that lay just beneath their fighting words. "Then tell me," he asked, their faces inches apart, "what you want from me. I want the truth. I want you to be the man I thought you were." She searched his eyes, desperation mingling with longing. "Maybe you should decide," Othello said, uncertain and raw, "if what you saw in me was ever real." The clouds broke briefly, allowing a silver glimmer of moonlight to pierce through the chaos above, a fleeting reminder that even the darkest storms eventually relent. From that high above, it gave way for a moment of clarity, one that did not go unnoticed by either. "Maybe it's a storm that pushes us together instead of tearing us apart," Chloe finally breathed, and as another crash of thunder rolled in the distance, it felt as if both of them were ready to ride this tumultuous wave together. Moments of resolve. The rain drummed against the windows of the small conference room, a sporadic rhythm echoing the tension spiraling between Othello Huxley and Chloe Carver. Their refuge from the chaos enveloping them was dimly lit, the smoky haze of late afternoon casting elongated shadows that swirled like unspoken truths hanging in the air. Othello leaned against the rugged wooden table, arms crossed, his posture deceptively casual, yet charged with an impending storm. His once dark eyes, now stormy gray, held something vulnerable and raw. The raindrops traced paths down the glass, droplets racing with each other as they fought for freedom, just as the two of them fought against the gravity of their past. Chloe stood at the far end of the table, arms wrapped around herself as if holding in the swirling heat of conflicting emotions. Her glossy chestnut hair framed her striking face, a mix of fierce determination and hurt that pulled at Othello's heart, tightening it with regret. The scent of wet earth filled the room, mingling with the sharp notes of fresh coffee steeped on the back counter. A moment of hush gripped them both, an unspoken acknowledgement of the weight they carried. "I can't believe you just left," Othello finally broke the silence, his voice like gravel. "That you let your father—" "My father devoted his life to that business, Othello," Chloe cut in, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "He sacrificed so much for it, and you made it crumble." Her eyes blazed with a storm of emotions as memories of betrayal flickered across her mind. The dampness of the rain felt almost tame compared to the intensity of the argument sparking between them. Othello's jaw tightened, the sound of his teeth grinding echoing off the walls. "It wasn't just me, Chloe," he retorted, frustration rippling through his words. "The decisions were made by many. I couldn't face what you did, or was it just easier to walk away?" She challenged, stepping closer, her breath quickening. The room vibrated with unsaid words, the air thick with a whirlwind of pain and passion. Othello pushed off the table, the distance closing as the two locked eyes, his gaze fierce with unyielding intensity, hers filled with a smoldering fury entwined with longing. The rain tapped louder, filling the gaps of their dialogue with a backdrop of nature's tempest. "Maybe I should have done more," he said, lowering his voice as if daunted by the emotional labyrinth between them. "But I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" she scoffed, crossing her arms tighter. You destroyed everything my parents worked for. Why wouldn't you take responsibility? Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder interrupted them, shaking the very foundation of the room. It was a jolt, but instead of flinching apart, they moved closer, a gravitational pull neither could resist. Chloe, please. Othello's voice softened, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Can we at least talk about this without the accusation? I've lost in more ways than you know. Chloe paused, the edge of her anger dulled by a hint of understanding, and in that moment, the room shifted, the energy softening as the rain lulled into a melodic rhythm. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps grief colored their memories, twisting them into weapons. What do you want from me, Othello? She whispered, vulnerability creeping into her tone. Their faces were inches apart, electricity sparking in the space between them, an invitation, a challenge. What I want, he leaned closer, his voice low, barely above the sound of the rain, is to find a way back to you, Chloe. I never wanted this to go so far. You meant the world to me, and I let it slip away. Chloe inhaled sharply, feeling the heat radiating off him. The rain became a soothing balm to the tumult within, and she cursed the way her heart betrayed her judgment, the way it pulsed, urging her to consider the man standing before her, the man who once meant everything. Yet, the flood of feelings was twisted with fear and desire, blurring the lines of past and future. I don't know if I can forgive you, she admitted, her voice trembling. Then let me earn it back. Othello stepped even closer, within reach, as the shadows flickered around them, a fire igniting unexpectedly in the quiet chaos. As the storm outside gathered strength, the two stood precariously on the cusp of something significant, a realization of what had been lost and a spark of what could be found again. The world beyond them faded, leaving nothing but the delicate balance of their hearts on the precipice. Just give me a chance, Othello urged softly, his breath mingling with hers in the charged silence. A moment of resolve. And in that stolen moment, destiny felt tantalizingly close. Scene 103. The weight of the past. The sun dipped behind the skyline, casting deep shadows across the kitchen as Chloe meticulously arranged ingredients on the counter. The clang of metal against ceramic punctuated the stillness, her movements precise yet frenetic. Olive oil glistened in a small dish, aromatic herbs lined up like soldiers waiting to be summoned. She inhaled the fresh scent of basil against the backdrop of memory, of family dinners and laughter that felt like echoes from a distant past. Othello entered, his presence a steady rhythm that sent a shiver down her spine. His eyes, always so full of secrets, flickered over the workspace, assessing, contemplating. The atmosphere thickened with unspoken words. She could almost hear the weight of their shared history pressing down like a heavy fog. "You're making my favorite," he said, an easy smile threading through tension as he leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. The grin tugged at her heart, but the past was a weight she couldn't ignore. "I figured it might help," she replied without meeting his gaze, focusing instead on the garlic she was mincing. Each slice of the knife was measured yet fierce, the rhythm desperately trying to drown out the pounding of her heart. "When did you become such a pro in the kitchen?" he teased, stepping closer, a playful gleam in his dark eyes. The warmth of his presence ignited something inside her, drawing out the long-repressed embers of affection. "After your last culinary disaster, I had to step up," she replied with a half-smile, the corners of her mouth betraying her desire to laugh, though the weight of unspoken anger hovered just beneath. "I'm not trying to win any awards here, just making dinner." But Othello wouldn't let the moment go unexamined. "You always have a way of turning the ordinary into something," he hesitated, searching for the right word. "Extraordinary." The tension hummed between them, sharp and electric, as if their bodies were magnetized, drawing them closer, yet tethered by the past they could not escape. She felt him standing behind her, so near that she could sense the warmth radiating from him, could almost feel it wrap around her like an embrace. "I don't know if I'm extraordinary, Othello," she breathed, her voice wavering on a knife's edge. "I've failed at so many things." The honesty of her admission hung in the air, heavy and raw. He stepped closer, the aroma of woodsy cedar mixing with the scent of olive oil, enveloping her in a familiar cloud of comfort. She couldn't help but turn her head slightly, catching a glimpse of his strong profile, his jaw clenched in thought, the turmoil evident in the subtle tightening of his features. "You didn't fail, Chloe," he softly, his voice low, almost reverent. "You just found a different path." She wanted to argue, to remind him of the choices that led to all their turmoil, of the betrayal that had drawn a line between them, one that felt insurmountable and yet so fragile. But his words had ignited something in her, a flickering flame of possibility that she long thought extinguished. "Maybe," she murmured, barely above a whisper, her heart racing as Othello stepped slightly closer, the space between them evaporating. Their eyes locked, and the world outside faded into oblivion, the bustling city, the clattering pots, all noise outstripped by their shared silence. The moment hung, taut and electric, as she felt his breath against her skin. Othello reached out slowly, pausing only for a heartbeat before brushing a rogue curl away from her face. His fingers lingered, sending a wave of warmth cascading through her. She shivered, knowing he felt it too, the invisible thread of honesty between them. "I wish you could see what I see," he whispered, inching closer, his gaze intense and searching. Chloe's resolve wavered as the distance between them dissolved. Her heart quickened, and a soft sigh escaped her lips as she tilted her head, inviting, while uncertainty swirled like autumn leaves caught in the wind. "We can't just pretend it was all," she began, but the words evaporated as he captured her gaze, an unrelenting pull that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Suddenly, he closed the space between them, daring to lean in, their bodies aligning. As their lips brushed, the kiss ignited an unspeakable longing, a surge of emotions she had buried deep within herself, passion punctuated by urgency, yet wrapped in tenderness. It was a silent acknowledgement, a release of everything that weighed them down. In that stolen moment, all the years of heartache bled away, leaving only the taste of hope and the intoxicating thrill of what could be. As their lips slowly separated, the world returned, cold and sharp. But the spark remained, a flicker of the past intertwined with the promise of the future.